Welcome to the Nichols College Fireside Chat. I am Dr. Timothy Liptrap, and as your host today, I'll be talking with faculty members from the Nichols College Sport Management Program about their current publication and their upcoming research. I'm here today with Dr. Brittany Jacobs and Assistant Professor Brian Wendry. Before we start talking about your research, it would be great for our alumni and friends and our colleagues to know a little bit more about you. So let's get started. So Brian, why don't we start off with you?
Perfect, thank you. Well, my background is coaching and administration. I coached at Wesleyan University back in the day, 30 years ago. Coached out in Seattle, coached some high schools at the Walker School for Girls, Middletown High School, etc. But I spent the bulk of my time running a nonprofit in Hartford, Connecticut, Riverfront Recapture. I grew that 25 years ago from a handful of rowers to a 700-person rowing club with over $1 million worth of equipment. We take all the corporate folks in the morning and the evening. We do the high school kids in the afternoon, adaptive program, veterans program, inner city program. So that was great. That was fun. I've been an adjunct here. I started adjuncting here about 7 years ago. Then after 3 years ago, I moved full-time, and so now I'm working in the sport management department.
Dr. Jacobs, could we ask you the same questions? So how long have you been here at Nichols College? Where did you come from? What do you like teaching about here? What's your teaching specialty?
Sure, absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jacobs. I've been here at Nichols College for 3 years, and it's a great place to be. I'm really happy to be here. So thanks to everyone for having me here and allowing me to work with our great students, as you mentioned, Brian. My specialty is really in Olympic and Paralympic sport. I previously worked for a national governing body, USA Rugby, and during that time I really got to feel what it was like to be a part of the Olympic movement. So that's something I'm very passionate about and really want to pass on to our students. Your final question is, why did I come to Nichols? I came to Nichols because I'm all about experiential and high impact learning. I really want students to be able to take what they're learning in the classroom and apply it to the field. That's going to prepare them for careers, prepare them for internships, and really make sure that they're ready to go when they graduate from our program.
So today we're here talking about your published article, Integrating Service Learning in the Sport Management Curriculum. Now we're minus one professor who just couldn't make it here today. Would one of you mind talking about the Professor Priscilla Alfaro Barrantes, give a little background on her and what her teaching specialty is?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Professor Alfaro Barrantes, her background is in PR. She worked for professional soccer for a number of years, and so her specialty is in PR and marketing, and those are the classes she teaches here. One really cool class that she also teaches relating to our experiential and high impact practices is the Super Bowl practicum. So she takes students all the way down to the Super Bowl. This year, of course, going to be in Florida. And essentially they spend a week there on the ground really working through what it's like to run a major sporting event like the Super Bowl. So some really cool experiences there, and she brings that into the research we're talking about today.
Okay. So Dr. Jacobs, I'm going to go to you first, then to Professor Wendry next for Brian. This article, Integrating Service Learning in the Sport Management Curriculum, where did you present it and where was it published?
Absolutely. So this article was first presented at the Teaching and Learning Fair at NASM. So NASM is the preeminent North American conference for sport management. And this conference brings together professionals and academics from all over the country and all over the world. So this was our first opportunity to share some of this work on service learning. And then from there we were able to publish in the Sport Management Education Journal. And the Sport Management Education Journal is really the top journal in the country for sport management education and for pedagogy-related research.
Professor Wendry. Yeah. So Brian, Professor Jacobs has been talking about high-impact learning practices. It enhances our student engagement in the classroom, in our course materials. Can you talk about service learning and how it was applied here at Nichols College, in particular to your research article?
Yeah, so service learning is a type of high-impact learning, and how it starts off, you would teach the concepts in the classroom, then the kids would go out and interact with the community, then you have to come back and do the reflection. Those three components are needed to kind of make it impactful for the students. While that makes sense to us now, it wasn't always the case. Back in the day, higher ed was all about recitation and memorization. But we've learned over time, this one gentleman, John Dewey, kind of started the idea of the importance of connecting the kids to the community and how it's a win-win because the students learn, they receive, educational value, and obviously the community learns. And so what Professor Barrantes did, in addition to the Super Bowl, she did this NC22 challenge. So her students, they researched nonprofits they wanted to work with. One of them was a veterans group. And so in the course of their research, they found that 22 veterans commit suicide every day, hence the name NC22 challenge. And being a sport management class, they decided, well, hey, how can we kind of honor the veterans? So they created a social media campaign where they encouraged people to do 22 push-ups and donate $22. And then each student had to try and incentivize other people via social media to do the same. So they kind of spread this NC22 challenge out throughout the community. And while it was projected to make $2,500, it actually made $6,000. And then again with the reflections, so you think, okay, this is just a great thing to do. It sounds good, but do we really know it works? Well, we do, because then Priscilla goes back and you do the reflections afterward. You get the student comments, you get the community partner comments, and you measure that, and it was just a fantastic success all around.
So the project happens inside a classroom.
Yeah.
So the high impact learning, so the students actually get the touch, they get the feel, they get to
Correct.
go do it, they work with the community members. And now we do this in many of our courses, but in this particular case, this was documented a little differently in research. So Professor Jacobs, can you talk to us about what the process is of taking a project in a classroom, starting the documentation of that, and turning it into a research project?
Absolutely. So one of the things that you really need to prepare for when creating a research project is you need to know what you're collecting, what data you need before you actually start doing any of it. So we sat down with Professor Alfaro Barrantes and kind of decided, how do we want to measure, or what do we want to look at in regard to service learning? So at that point we decided how we would collect that data, and we decided we would do a qualitative study, collecting data from students' reflections in order to essentially validate, like Professor Wendry said, essentially validate the value of service learning and to the curriculum and to the community. So that was kind of the starting point. And then Professor Alfaro Barrantes was able to run that project, run it with the students, and we were able to utilize that data as part of the research project.
Okay, so then at that stage, you've got the data coming in. So she did the project, the students did what they needed to do, they're part of it. You gathered the data, the reflections back.
Yep.
Then talk to us, if you would, about that process thereafter. So how does that work? How do you take that data and then compile it so it comes out to be a research project?
Absolutely. So it's actually quite an intensive project and process to take data from the beginning throughout an entire research study and then compile it into a research article. So for us, we gathered as a group and really went through that data, combed through the data, coded it, developed themes, et cetera, that we would start using for the project and for the research paper. Then we developed it into a conference presentation first. For us, that was a great way to test the waters and make sure that what we were speaking about was actually resonating with our audience. Then we took back any feedback from that conference presentation and we were able to draft it into a manuscript. Now the manuscript process is a slow one, it's arduous. Not only do you write the paper, but then you actually have to send it in, wait for feedback from external reviewers. That feedback comes back, you have to make any updates or changes, and then you can send it back out. This process from start to finish typically takes over a year. So something even as small as a 6 to 10 page article there would take over a year to produce.
So how do you squeeze, to either one of you, how do you squeeze research time in? Our first and foremost job is to teach here in Nichols College. We've been on teaching college for many, many years, and our first job is to teach the students in the classroom. Then we get to do these outside publications, research, textbooks, whatever we might be doing as faculty members. How do you find the time?
I mean, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Right.
So you just take small, do a little bit, a little bit, a little bit,
Right.
and just keep plugging away at it.
Okay. And Professor Dr. Jacobs, how do you find the time?
Yeah, I think one thing we've been really successful at as a department is finding ways to integrate our research into our classroom teaching. So this is a great example. Professor Alfaro Barrantes wanted to run this service learning project, so we said, okay, well, how do we develop this into a research project so we can essentially kill two birds with one stone? Beyond that, when we're doing research external to pedagogy, it's a lot more difficult to find that time. I think you'll find that most of us are working nights and weekends in order to squeeze in time to do the research.
Where can we find this publication?
So the Sport Management Education Journal, you can actually go to, there's an online publication and then there's a hard copy publication. I don't know if anyone still gets mailers anymore, but if you do, you can get it mailed to you. But otherwise, you can access it online. My preferred and easiest way probably to access any of these things is if you go to Google Scholar and type in our names. It'll pop right up.
Thank you for joining us today at the Faculty Fireside Chat. We look forward to seeing you in our next one.